So, Jill, tell me about Braille.
Okay. So Braille was first created in, I believe it was 1824. Yeah, it's probably by a person named Louis Braille, and when he was 3 years old, he ended up losing his sight in a rather tragic way by, like, I believe it was like a leather owl or owl. I'm not sure how you say that. Awl? Is that how you say it? An owl. In his dad's like leather workshop, and because of like the trauma from one eye, I think it was called like sympathetic ophthalmology, I believe is how you say it, and it's basically like when you have trauma to one eye, the other eye kind of reacts and becomes inflamed and like, sympathizes with the other eye and causes them to lose sight in that remaining eye. So he lost all his sight quite tragically and drastically. And then when he was about 15, he was attending the National School for Blind Children, I believe it was called, in Paris. And when he was 15, he actually ended up creating a code using raised dots called Braille after him. And it works in like a 6-dot sequence. So there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 dots. And that's called a Braille cell when it's the full 6 dots. And using just those 6 dots, 3 side by side, letters are formed, numbers are formed, punctuation. There's actually like a whole code designed around that for math and science symbols. And there's actually a Braille code for music, like reading sheet music, which was really cool. I don't know either of those, but I'm not that advanced in Braille either. So he created that, and it's been kind of improved over the years, and it's now at pretty much every language has their own Braille code. And like I said, it's used for math and science and music and just basic reading and reading novels or textbooks. And the thing with Braille too, it's quite thick paper, as I'm sure you could tell. And the thing too is like the Braille dots, which like be able to form sentences, like words and sentences, paragraphs, etc. It's kind of laid out the same way as like a print book would be. So you have to have specific, like a certain amount of space between each letter, each word, each line, each paragraph. I believe they're usually indented, like a paragraph would typically be sometimes. I don't think Braille, as far as I know, has like a form of like bold or italics to indicate here's a heading or here's a subheading kind of thing, right? And like the way that Braille's typically read is, I'm left-handed, so it makes it harder actually. But it's usually just using like your 2 pointer fingers, and you just like lightly run them across, like obviously from left to right is like how everyone reads typically, at least in English, right? So that's the same with Braille. You just move your fingers from side to side. But this one, like I guess it depends on your left or right-handed. But for me, my right hand pointer finger is the one that I typically use to go along the whole line. But my left hand, like usually when I get halfway to the line, I drop down to find the second line, so it doesn't get too confusing. I lose my place, right? So the right finger for me is typically used to read the individual letters, and the left hand pointer finger is to keep my place and kind of trail each line so I don't lose my place.
Okay, so like navigation.
Mm-hmm. In like a specific way, because like just looking at like just like having your hand on it, there's like dots everywhere, and it's kind of quite hard to, if you get lost, it's kind of harder to find your place, at least for me, because I'm not as experienced. But the thing too is most like people who are typically like born blind, or are blind from like a quite young age, they tend to learn Braille in like all the way from elementary school, like writing like the first day of kindergarten, basically all the way up to the end of high school. And I actually was taught sort of like the basics of Braille in grade 2 and 3, but because I was only low vision, so I had quite a bit of sight at that point still. I would look at the dots and decipher the letters and numbers and stuff that way instead of actually feeling it. So I kind of cheated, which wasn't the point of learning Braille, was by looking at it. So they stopped teaching it to me because I was too visual. So Braille also has what, at least what I call it, or like I've been told to call it, it's called grade 1 and grade 2 Braille. And grade 1 is where it's just the basics, so you learn the 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, like the Braille cell, you learn that concept, and then you learn how they take away certain dots to form letters. Or they'll add a specific set of dots in front of that letter to form a number. And like you learn the basic like punctuation, like a period and a comma, and I think I learned a question mark and an exclamation mark, or like the basics in that one. And then you if you kind of complete that grade 1 aspect, you go to grade 2, where it's basically you learn the contractions, and the contractions are, because Braille's, like I said, such thick paper and takes up so much space, like takes up a lot of space, that they eventually formed contractions where certain words and certain parts of a word, like for example the like sh or th or ing, ar, er, ea, like certain things like that are very common in most, like quite a few English words, they have created a specific symbol to like indicate what that is. So it takes up a little bit less space. So like I'm trying to remember them, but again, an sh, instead of being like literally the letter S and H in Braille, it's just combined to be just one symbol. Like
shorthand.
Yeah, exactly. It's like abbreviations, right? So there's a proper word for it, but I don't remember. But in the Braille blind world, you call them contractions. So like, for example, certain words are also contracted to form just one letter. So the word knowledge is just the letter K in Braille.
Oh.
Because knowledge is such a long word theoretically that I don't know why that one specifically became K. Knowledge just became the letter K, but it did.
Huh.
And
Interesting.
what were the other ones? BL, like the letters BL in Braille, I believe represents blind, like the word blind, which is ironic because, that's a lot of the whole point of Braille. And I want to say the letter L is for the word like, and what else is there? Oh, the letter G represents the word go, and I believe T is for to, like just TO, that one, and then the letter H is for, I believe it's have. What else is there? Those are all the ones that I remember. I haven't refreshed myself in a while, but so like, I'm not exactly sure why they chose those specific words to just be one letter, but like it's been that way for probably since like the beginning of Braille. So everyone who knows Braille knows that that's the thing, right? Yeah, and then even the thing too with how I said there's certain contractions for like the sh or ing, like for the word pushing, for example, it'd be like the letter P, U, S, Would be a contraction, the ing would be a contraction. So instead of thinking that like,
So it becomes
like
4 letters instead of
however, like P,
6.
yeah, right? 6 or 7. So they shorten it like quite considerably to take up less space.
Yeah.
Especially like the thing too with Braille is like obviously in print a whole story would just be one solid book, right? But in like with Braille, because again it's so much bigger and takes up so much more space, that like a book, like just like a novel or even a textbook, would be multiple volumes. So like I know this one, for example, it says volume. It says volume. Where'd it go? There's volume 2, I believe. So like this is one of 2 volumes, and I actually have a friend who, like I said before, there's certain Braille codes for math. His math textbook is 72 volumes, I believe.
Oh my god.
Braille books, just in Braille in general, does take up a lot of space. So I've never really read a whole novel. I've never even really bothered to read a whole novel with it. But the nice thing about Braille as well is they have, so these are like, so there's like a lot of different, obviously, ways of binding a book. But in my opinion, like this sort of binding, with just like a couple staples, and like it stays open, but you have to kind of like brace your arm on it to keep it fully flat, but then
Yeah.
you don't want to squish the Braille as well, right? So you have to like try and be like really gentle about it. But as where this binding, again, is like a little bit, in my opinion, a little bit cheaper and probably easier to make, but it also does, the book is fully flat on the table, right? So you don't really have to worry so much about having to rest your arm or squish it, but it's also a lot smaller of a book. So, and then this one as well has the metal coils, which to me just looks a lot more professional, a lot more clean, and it actually does the same thing where it just makes the book fully flat. So you're not worried about trying to, like as with this one, you're not trying to keep it completely flat and stable. But also, when I was first learning, like this was the first book they gave me, that's what I was trying to say, and it's just like, goes from like the basic letters and numbers and punctuation all the way to the contractions. But as you can tell, as like flipping through the page, it's not, like there's nothing on this page, and then like it's not double-sided, and that's just, like when you're first learning out, double-sided is quite difficult to read because you can feel the indents from the like the back of the page on this page, right? So that makes it harder. As where, like I'll show you for example, like this page. I've been showing it to you technically, but you wouldn't know. But it's actually double-sided, if you can tell. So like there's all this.
Yeah, we get close.
I don't know if you can tell the indents or not actually.
Yeah, so you can see.
Can you see the indents or no?
Focus, camera focus. So you can see here how it's raised, and then here how it's smooth.
Mm-hmm.
Across the page.
Yeah, right. So then, as you flip it, like actually you can. It's like a normal book where there's, like, with a normal novel or any book, there's print on both sides of the page, right? And it's the same with Braille, but it kind of takes some practice to get up, I guess, up to that level of double-sided. But it also takes some like quite a bit of focus at the beginning, at least, to like, what's all this other indent and stuff? Like, what's all this? And then you realize it's the other side of the page.
Yeah.
So like, after a while, it becomes a lot less easy, or like a lot more easy to figure out what is what. Like I was saying to you before, when you're reading with Braille, and it's like the end of a sentence, so, or even if there's a comma within the sentence, that punctuation, at least at first when you're learning, it tends to seem like another letter. So you're trying to like what is this word? Like, what's this thing on the end? I'm so confused. And then eventually, like, it clicks that, oh, it's a punctuation, it's a comma, it's a period. Like, that took me a long time to figure out as well. Just, I was so new to it. And,
Yeah, but after a while you get used to it.
yeah, exactly. And like, because I was used to reading print as well, right? So they were a lot smaller versus the letters in print, as were in Braille. They're the same size, but so for example, I think for example, like a D, like a letter D. So Heather explained before, it's like dots 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. I guess it's backwards for you, so 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. A letter D is dots 1, 4, and 5.
Okay.
But a period, I believe, is dots 3, 4, no, 3, 5, and 6. So it's the same shape of a letter D, but just lower in the Braille cell.
Oh, okay.
So right, so it's kind of like it messes you up a little bit because you're thinking, oh, that looks like a D, but you have to realize that it's lower down.
Right.
Right. So it takes a lot of practice to get used to that and be able to like fluently, like just continuously be able to like go line after line, jump down, keep going. Oh, that's the end of a sentence. Next line, like there's a comma, like that kind of stuff. It takes quite a lot of practice.
Yeah.
And I'm not like I guess fluent could be the word, just because I don't normally read in Braille, but I do use Braille. Actually, there's a few different ways. So I didn't know. So there's actually a lot of like Braille around, but not just in the form of like books or textbooks or like that kind of thing.
Yeah, there's Braille in the real world.
Exactly, yeah. So like, oh, I pulled up the stupid wild cards. The wild cards because they're annoying. We don't like them. I think that's all of them. Yeah. so these are like actually just like I'm not sure if they actually have like the I know there's print as well as Braille on here.
Yeah.
So like if it's like, what's this one on top? So it's an ace of spades, right?
Mm-hmm.
So does it have like the letter A, but does it show this like the spade, like the shape of the spade?
Yeah.
As well. Okay. So this one like I guess obviously because like for Braille playing cards, it's like we know the suits are like hearts, clubs, diamonds, and spades.
Mm-hmm.
So with Braille, those whichever suit you're looking at will have the first letter. So spade is just an S, and heart is just an H, D is diamond, right?
Mm-hmm.
But with numbers in Braille, there's like I think I've said before, there's a specific symbol that you put in front of a letter that would indicate that this is a number, right? So
Right.
in Braille, A to J is 1 to 0. So like A is the letter number 1, B is 2, C is 3, on and on, up to 0, which is a J, and then to form like multiple numbers like 22 or like 105, like you would just put those certain numbers together, or those like, for example, for like 22 you put a letter B and a B side by side, but you'd have that number, we call it a number symbol in front of it to indicate that those two B's are actually 22.
Okay. That makes sense.
Yeah, it's pretty like simple actually if you think about it, but and with like these playing cards is the same thing. So like it's an ace of spades, so of course ace is 1. So and then which is kind of cool in a way because ace is an A, so the letter A, number 1. I thought that was kind of cool. And then like it goes on, so like this one. So it's a king of hearts. So like what's it? Cause, so like the king, like the is just a letter K to represent king, and the H is hearts.
Okay.
And then once we get, let's pull around and we'll get all the cards here. So this one is, it's a 4 of hearts, right?
8 of diamonds.
Oh, diamonds. Am I looking at it wrong? That's the thing too with Braille, you have to like make sure you line it up properly so you don't get too confused with it. But I also realized like, also because like an H is also an 8, but with the suits of the cards, H represents a heart, right? So after like you have to remember that with the Braille cards, the number, it's like the number then the suit. So that's why I said heart of like a 4 of hearts, because a D is also a letter, or the letter D is also the number 4. So like things like that, it kind of get a little confusing.
So reading it one way, it's the 4 of hearts, and
Mhm.
reading it the other way, it's the 8 of diamonds.
Yeah. So and like with Braille, you have to like, so like if I were to read it, I don't know, it's the same way that way, but like, so like there's the same on either corner, but in my head, because I know that the letter D is also the number 4, as well as the letter H is also the number 8, but also because of these cards, a D represents diamonds and H represents hearts. So the way that I just read it, I said a 4 of hearts because the H represents the suit of hearts and the D represents a 4. So like I just mixed them up.
Yeah.
So it's easy. I find it's very easy to do that if you're actually like you might be on an angle by accident or like something like that where like they're very similar. There's like in a different sequence so that it means something different, right?
Yeah, so the orientation is very important
Yeah.
when you're trying to read Braille.
Exactly, yeah. So that's a king of diamonds. Like I guess like one of the biggest questions, like how do people make Braille? Like how does it get shaped and formed into books and playing cards and board games and so basically there's actually a few different ways that it's done and like manufactured. So like the basic one, I wish I had these tools to show, but I don't actually have them myself, but it's called, so one form is called a slate and stylus, where it's like, so it's like, from what I remember, it's like this little metal plate, and you slide a piece of Braille paper in it to hold it in place. And you have like this little like pen, like needle thing, and you actually like poke the paper with it to form your own letters.
Okay, so you emboss it. So the
But it's all that one's all handheld, like all done by your hand. But the thing too is when you're doing it, from what I remember, if you have a piece of Braille paper, you have to do when you create the Braille with that little like needle pen tool thing, you actually have to create the Braille backwards. So when you flip it, then it's proper, right? So I'm like, that was so hard for me because that was just like, it's basically like the same sort of thing people would do if they were taking a quick note. Like let's say like a sighted person would have a notebook and a pen and they just jot down a note, right? I've known the slate and stylus to be used to do the same kind of thing. Go, here's my phone number. Okay, I'll write it down. It's slate and stylus. So the next thing is, it's called a Brailler. The brand that I know the best is called a Perkins Brailler, which is, I believe, like designed from, like, there's a school in, I want to say California, but I could be wrong, called the Perkins School for the Blind. And I want to say that's where the Braillers were created, but I could be really wrong. But basically what this Brailler looks like is it looks kind of like a typewriter, like an old-fashioned typewriter, where you put the paper in, you like spin it down to like go into the machine. Mm-hmm. But instead of having the whole bunch of like all the keys in a space, like all the keys like a normal typewriter, this one only actually has 3 dots on either side, so which would represent dots 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Like it's the same thing as if when I explained like the dots were like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Like it's a Braille cell. So with these 3 dots, when you if I were to make a letter C, which is dots 1 and 4, so I press them, and then on the paper it would form like a normal letter C in Braille, right? So the fact that like it's usually like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, these 6 keys on the Brailler, like basically if you were like pull them and put them side by side, they're 6 parted, right, to be on the other side. Right. And there's a space bar, and there's like a line separator with new line, and I forget the other. There's one other key, but I forget. There's also, it's like when the cool thing, like a typewriter as well, when you get to the end of the line, it dings, right? So that's the same with the Brailler. So there's like a little, like just slide the back to the front or whatever, to the new line. Yeah. So the return, that's right. So exactly, it's pretty much like, I'm pretty sure the idea for a Brailler was based off of a typewriter, theoretically. Yeah. From my understanding, just like, I guess, just thinking about it like, generally. So that's how a lot of people will do like assignments in school, like if they're doing math, like in a math assignment, they would just do Braille, and if they're writing like something for English class, and I've used it to practice Braille. So like they would give me a story, and then I would have to read the story and Braille it out to show that I understood how to Braille, like the concept of how to use the Brailler, right? Mm-hmm. And actually, it sounds, honestly, it's so cool when you get pretty good at it. You can go quite fast, and it just sounds so cool. So that's like the main one that I've used, just the Brailler. That's most commonly used for when you're doing you're writing your own things. But it's also it's a computerized Braille embosser. So there'll be a document on the computer, and you'll feed it. It's really loud, really obnoxious. Actually, it sounds really cool, but it's so loud. And basically, whatever that document is, it's hooked up to the computer into this Braille embosser, and it basically to me it's like my version of thinking of it is like a Braille printer. So this document will go to the Braille embosser and spit out the Braille document. Right. So it prints, but printing by Braille punching holes. Exactly. Right. So that's the best way I can describe it. So, and from my understanding, that's how they do. I'm pretty sure that's how they would do books like this, I believe. I also know that I never actually I didn't use Braille in school. Like I said, I was mainly technology based. But I had a friend, and that's how, if they had readings for class, or handouts from their lecture or whatever, that's how they would get those readings accessible to them. Okay. If they prefer Braille. Some people prefer Braille over the digital format anyways. But yeah, for me, I only use Braille for a few things like these playing cards. But the nice thing too is they're also in a lot of elevators as well as door signs to find your room number and that kind of thing. That's what I mainly decided to learn it for, was just for the playing cards and to find door signs easily. So that's pretty much my own use of it, but I thought it would be worthwhile just learning to use it in case I ever came into a situation where like a piece of paper or a reading or something wasn't digitally accessible to me, then I could just, okay, I want it in Braille.
Yeah.
It's already made in Braille, possibly, right? So, yeah, it's a really interesting concept, and I'm glad that even though they didn't teach it to me in school, I decided to go learn it for myself, just because I thought it was something worthwhile to learn. To me, it's something every blind person should learn to do, like whether they actually use it, like, often or not. I think it's still a useful skill to have, especially for door signs.
Yeah.
And elevators especially.
Navigating public spaces.
Exactly.
May be almost inaccessible.
Right. Like, because like a lot of door signs, obviously they have like they have tactile, like raised, like the symbols for like a man or a woman on the bathroom sign. Like, those are raised, like tactile.
Mm-hmm.
They also have like the word washroom is also tactile, for example, but it's also in Braille underneath.
Yeah.
So you can basically use the signs, you can use the printed tactile raised word, or the Braille. So you have a lot of options, which is really nice.
Yeah.
And especially down in Vancouver in the Lower Mainland, that's a huge thing. Where like most, like theoretically anyways, most public areas are supposed to have like the raised, like those 3 raised options of the symbols, the type, like the printed word that's tactile, or the Braille.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, and that's Braille.